The early development of American football moved through scattered regional experiments, loose rules, and a mix of rugby and soccer influences. What eventually emerged as the National Football League did not begin as a polished organization. It started as a response to chaos. Before the league existed, professional teams were scattered across small industrial towns. They signed players without structure, poached each other's stars, and operated on unstable finances. The sport was popular at the college level, but professional football carried a reputation for low standards and inconsistent play. The need for order pushed a handful of team owners to meet in Canton, Ohio, in 1920. They wanted to stabilize costs, enforce player rules, and establish a shared identity. What took shape was the foundation of modern American football, although no one present understood the size of what they had started. In the first years, the league struggled for recognition. Teams joined and folded quickly, leaving fans unsure about which clubs would survive. Scheduling was inconsistent, championships were disputed, and many franchises played in modest venues with limited media attention. Still, the league slowly gained traction because it offered structure. It established basic rules, formalized contracts, and created a central authority to reduce conflicts between clubs. This early period was more about survival than growth. The NFL focused on stability, hoping that fans and sponsors would eventually trust the professional version of the game. What kept the league alive was a small group of influential figures who believed that American football needed a unified professional body to grow beyond college campuses. The growth of the league depended on its ability to differentiate itself from college football without abandoning the physical excitement fans loved. By the late 1920s, the league realized it needed competitive balance and recognizable stars. Red Grange gave the NFL one of its first major boosts when he joined the Chicago Bears. His popularity drew new fans and helped legitimize the league. Stadiums began to fill, and newspapers covered pro games more consistently. The league also started standardizing rules to make play more organized. The forward pass became more accepted, and protections for players improved, reducing injuries and making games more sustainable. These developments gave the NFL the foundation for long-term relevance. The transition into the 1930s and 1940s pushed the league toward modernization. The NFL began to introduce regulations that shaped the competitive landscape. It created the annual draft, a system designed to distribute talent more fairly and prevent large market teams from dominating. This single innovation stabilized the league's future more effectively than almost anything that came before it. Teams with weak records had access to top college talent, which allowed them to rebuild and remain relevant. The draft gave fans hope. The NFL entered the 1960s in a position of growing strength, but it was not yet the dominant force it would later become. The pressure from the AFL had forced the league to recognize that American football was evolving faster than expected. Fans wanted more excitement, more scoring, and more visibility. The NFL understood that it had to adjust. Teams began experimenting with new offensive schemes, creative formations, and more open passing strategies. Coaches who once relied on conservative styles realized that the game was shifting toward speed and unpredictability. This transition opened the door for a new generation of athletes who were faster, stronger, and better trained than their predecessors. The league adapted its scouting, its approach to player development, and its understanding of what audiences valued in a football game. Television was becoming the heart of the entertainment industry. Families were gathering around their sets every week, and the NFL learned how to use this new reality to its advantage. National broadcasts increased visibility for every team, not just those in major markets. Fans from regions without professional teams began following clubs hundreds of miles away because television made them feel connected. The league worked with networks to refine the viewer experience, from camera placements to graphics to commentary styles. Every improvement made the sport more accessible, and it created a sense of unity across the country. As television exposure expanded, so did the popularity of iconic players. Quarterbacks, running backs, and defensive stars became household names. Kids copied their moves in backyards, and their stories helped the league build a deeper emotional connection with fans. One of the most important moments in this period was the decision to bring the NFL and AFL together. The rivalry for talent had escalated salaries and strained resources on both sides. It was clear that the sport would be stronger if it operated under one structure. Negotiations were difficult, with both leagues protecting their identities and markets, but the eventual agreement reshaped professional football. The merger created a unified schedule, standardized rules, and connected fans across a larger national landscape. It brought new energy to the sport and made room for more teams, spreading professional football farther across the country. The competition between the leagues had forced innovation, and the merger allowed all those improvements to be integrated into one stronger organization. The first Super Bowls were not the spectacles they would become. Early games were treated with curiosity rather than reverence. But they gave fans a clear way to measure the best teams from each league. When the AFL's teams proved they could compete with established NFL franchises, fans became even more invested. Over time, the Super Bowl grew in significance. What started as a championship matchup gradually became a national event that. As the NFL moved deeper into the 2000s, it entered a phase defined by rapid technological change, expanding global reach, and increased scrutiny of how the sport affected the long-term health of its players. The league faced an environment where every decision was analyzed publicly, and expectations from fans, players, and partners were higher than at any point in its history. The NFL recognized that it had to protect both the integrity of the game and the trust of the people who followed it. This required a combination of transparency, modernization, and a willingness to look critically at practices that had been in place for decades. Player safety became one of the most important topics during this period. Research on head injuries and chronic traumatic conditions changed how people understood the risks of football. The league had to confront the reality that the sport's physical intensity came with serious long-term consequences. In response, the NFL introduced new rules to limit dangerous hits, especially those involving the head and neck. Equipment standards improved, and independent medical staff became part of every sideline. Concussion protocols were redesigned to prioritize player health over competitive pressure. These changes were not only responses to public concern but also part of a long-term strategy to make the sport sustainable for future generations of athletes. The league continued adapting the on-field product to keep the game competitive and entertaining. Offensive innovations like spread formations, run-pass options, and more sophisticated passing concepts forced defenses to evolve. Coaches leaned heavily on analytics to inform decisions. Fourth down attempts increased, clock management strategies changed, and roster construction became more data-driven. These shifts made games more unpredictable and created fresh strategic battles every week. Younger fans appreciated the faster pace, and older fans saw a deeper level of tactical competition. The NFL's ability to evolve without losing its identity helped maintain its position as the most-watched sport in the country. Digital media reshaped how fans consumed football. The league embraced streaming platforms, social media, and on-demand highlights. Instead of relying only on traditional broadcasts, the NFL distributed content across multiple channels, reaching fans on phones, tablets, and computers. This shift strengthened engagement, especially with younger audiences who were more likely to follow the sport online than through cable television. Teams used their digital platforms to build direct relationships with fans, offering behind-the-scenes access, interviews, and interactive content. The league's media strategy ensured that football remained part of daily conversation, even on days when games were not being played. Global expansion became a key part of the NFL's long-term planning. The league saw opportunities in Europe, Latin America, and parts of Asia where in Tier